Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. Our tiptoe through the tulips that is the Conjuring franchise is almost at an end, but today's video is unexpected for me. It's an object lesson in why it is sometimes well worth returning to a movie that you didn't completely connect with the first time round. It doesn't always work, but today is one of those frabjous days where I'm very happy to report that having watched Annabelle Comes Home for the second time, my opinion of it has completely changed. I had an insanely fun time with it, and that is all thanks down to someone of this parish, one Randy Mole on Twitter, and you'll remember a lot of you Randy Mole from the Jambo Shango and Randy Mole channel. On Twitter, Randy Mole gave me his opinion of Annabelle Comes Home a little while ago, and sort of gave me the key to unlocking my enjoyment of it, an angle of approach that had not occurred to me previously, one which I will share with you. My history with the Annabelle movies is patchy, as you'll know. I didn't like, and upon rewatch still do not like, Annabelle. I rated, and upon rewatch still rate very strongly, Annabelle Creation. I think it's one of the strongest entries in the Conjuring franchise. And I thought Annabelle Comes Home just let everything off the boil, turned right when the course correction of Annabelle Creation had set the series in this direction. I just thought, what is this strange sort of babysitting adventures with badly cartooned CGI werewolves and seemingly no real consequences, where the threat of Annabelle doesn't seem to be that great. The doll herself, the threat of the doll, seemed to have been defanged into this weird sort of cartoony world. And when I first watched it, I thought, really, is this the best? Is this the best you can do? It's kind of nothing fluff, and I forgot about it and I really haven't thought about it. It's a very strange proposition because it's almost not an Annabelle movie. It sits somewhere between being an Annabelle movie and a main Conjuring movie. Chronology-wise, it's, apart from a sort of continuity goof with an item from The Conjuring that shouldn't be there in the Warrens' sort of occult cellar, chronology-wise, it sits firmly between the opening Annabelle section of The Conjuring and the time jump to the first case of The Conjuring. I don't know why I wasn't all over that first time round. I love what I call continuity porn. I love it when something like the Saw franchise just meshes its continuity together in increasingly contorted ways. So the sort of contortionist continuity that this movie really is up my street. So I should kind of dig that madness. But I think when I first went to see it, what I was expecting was a third Annabelle movie, and this kind of really isn't it. It's neither beast nor fowl, nor is it an actual full-blown Conjuring movie. It's almost like a side quest in a game. And this one seemed to be very cartoony, babysittery, CGI fog werewolf monster nonsense. And I just thought it was all quite frothy and tonally very different to what I was expecting going in. The joy of returning to movies like this is you can approach them on their own terms, not what you expected or wanted a movie to be, but what a movie actually is. And that key that Randy Mole gave me was that he told me that he viewed it as a sort of slightly aged up Goosebumps movie. And a sort of little light bulb went off in my head, and upon rewatch realised that he is absolutely right. And if you approach it on that level, a horror movie for the teens that, yes, does skew a little more R.L. Steiny and is a little bit more technicolor in its sort of colour saturation, and you can see it right from the start. It seemed bloody obvious to me on second viewing, and I'm really grateful for Randy Mole to sort of steering me that way. as soon as the Warrens at the start of the movie get the Annabelle doll, and then their car breaks down and it's suddenly surrounded by fog, and they're sat right by the wrought iron gates of a cemetery, and the sort of ghosts appear there. This is, in the best possible way, this is Scooby-Doo horror movie ghost country. This isn't sort of the slightly more po-faced evil is real of the Conjuring world, and all the cues were there. The slightly more oversaturated colours than we're used to seeing in Conjuring movies, and the goosebumpy point horror style, slight oversaturation of the horror itself and the horror characters. This is an absolute ghost train of a movie. You buckle yourself in and it takes you through, and you know you're going to come out safe on the other end, and the scares it delivers are pretty solid. We deal with a day and a night in the Warren household when they're off doing some stuff, and their daughter Judy is being babysat, and a couple of her babysitters' friends come over, and they do what you should never do, which is go into the room that says do not enter, everything in here is dangerous, and they go to the case that Annabelle is in that says positively warning, positively do not open, and they open it. And one of the things I like is that I think there's a really good character reason why that character goes and does it. She has a deep-seated emotional need to make contact, to have evidence of something beyond death. And what we get is the release not just of Annabelle, but Annabelle works as a sort of ringmaster for lots of the other spirits, ghosts, bugaboos to scare the kids throughout the night. And I think the scares are pretty decent on the whole. Yeah, the werewolf, the black shuck, whatever you want to call it, the hellhound outside is CG nonsense. Far too cartoony. But if you watch it as a Goosebumpsy style movie, that's fine. That's the bread and butter of those kind of movies. I think the ferryman character, there's some really cool chills out of that. Some really cool images where it's just the coins that get lit up in the darkness and stuff like that. Really dug that. The Annabelle character itself has some pretty cool scare moments. The spirit of B, the dead girl that sort of whose death's almost kick-started the whole thing off, ringing on the doorbell. Can Annabelle come out to play? That's spooky enough. The doll appearing under your bedclothes at night while you're asleep, even though that scare is lifted a little from due on The Grudge. It's okay. These Annabelle offshoot movies do seem to like lifting from other movies, but I think on the whole the scares are good. The wedding dress that sort of possesses you with the spirit of the woman who had previously worn it and who drives you to violent revenge, that's all pretty good, especially her whispering, "I like your doll." There's good creepy stuff going on here. I think, having read up about it, the director kind of got slightly cold feet that this was cut from a slightly different cloth from the rest of the Conjuring movies. I read that he thought that this movie should be R-rated because every other Conjuring movie had been R-rated, so what they do is they add an F-bomb into it, and the possession of one of the characters by the haunted wedding dress was sort of amped up for gore, and there's a sort of fake out bloody stabbing instead of, you can see on the deleted scenes what the original sort of possession scene was going to be, and that's creepy and nice, and it works absolutely perfectly. So for want of an R rating that the movie doesn't need, the younger teens couldn't go and see this movie, which is absolutely solidly aimed at them. All the performances are absolutely great. The little kid in it is superb. She's almost sort of like the master of common sense in the whole thing. She knows to defer and pay respect to these sort of cursed and haunted items more than anyone else in the movie does. I think Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are clearly a little bit more loosey-goosey in this than they are in the Conjuring movies, having fun with it, and they sort of bookend the movie and bring a sort of up energy to the proceedings, all of which indicates that this is lighter, slightly more cartoony fare than the rest of the Conjuring movies. As the story moves into the nighttime portion, that sort of fairground ride attraction sensibility is really amped up. They make fantastic use of young Judy's nightlight, which is a rotating wheel of different sort of primary shades to start making everything look sort of more lurid, more cartoony, more extreme, building to an absolutely glorious sequence. Possibly one of my favourite sequences in the entire Conjuring franchise, where one of the teenage girls who is now wearing and possessed by the cursed wedding dress and now sent into a murderous rage is about to stab her best friend when Judy turns on the projector, which includes footage of her parents performing an exorcism, and whilst in flagrante about to stab her best friend, this possessed young girl is frozen while the image of Ed Warren loudly performing an exorcism, holding a cross in front of him with the cross sort of projected emblazoned onto her, pinning her in place like a butterfly on a board. Such a hysterical, wild, over-the-top image and sequence that wouldn't look out of place in the 70s and 80s Italian horror movies that I absolutely love. Wouldn't have looked out of place at all in the wilder early days of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead movies. That, to me, is the real culmination that we build to here. I know there's other stuff that they have to go through to get Annabelle back in the case and a confrontation with the demon. But here, this sort of shrieking hysteria, this sort of vibrating madness of too many E numbers, so you just can't get to sleep. That kind of sort of cartoonish horror is what Annabelle Comes Home builds to, and I actually now think that its complete tonal difference to the rest of the Conjuring movies is an asset, an absolute strength, rather than something that I didn't appreciate when I first watched it and was just thinking, what the fuck is this? What it turns out to be, thanks to the insight of Randy Mole, just telling me to just tilt my head a few degrees and watch it at a slightly different angle, is to just unlock a gloriously fun movie. Yeah, there are no real stakes. Yeah, Annabelle has never really turned out to be the great threat she has been presented as since the very first Conjuring movie. But it's fun. The scares are good. They're solid. The stakes are exactly as they should be for a movie that should be for younger teens and didn't need to achieve that R rating at all just to be of a piece with the rest of the Conjuring franchise. Its strength lies in the fact that it's not of a piece, that it tries something different. So I'm absolutely made up that a movie that I wasn't warm towards now turns out to be a diamond in the rough for me, something that I can return to and just have fun with and not be so bloody uptight about the whole thing. Maybe I can take this new spirit of détente with the Conjuring movies into the final movie, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I can't swear I will, but I'll give it my absolute best shot, and I will let you know how that turns out once I sit down and rewatch what I didn't really like the first time round, but fingers crossed for The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Maybe that'll turn me around as well. Who knows?
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.